John DeSouza spent 25 years as an FBI special agent working on counterterrorism and paranormal cases. He was an attorney and maintained a top secret security clearance during his time in the US government. He collected true life X Files that were part of the very popular X Files TV series. He shared many of these cases in his best selling books and his worldwide presentations, and he's got some startling information about false flag attacks and how UFOs are a centerpiece for what lays ahead for humanity.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome, John, to Exopolitics Today. Great to have you back.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It is great to be here with you on Exopolitics Today with your great audience and with all of you guys. It's always very interesting and very good to be with you guys because you guys have your finger on the pulse for the most part. And it's something very important that I seek to exploit, especially today.
Well, you've got an incredible amount of information. Now, I know many people focus on your background in the FBI and the X-Files, but I did take a look at your book, The Extra-Dimensionals, and you talk about an incident when you were 9 years old about an abduction attempt involving, I guess, 4 gray aliens tried to abduct you, and they were doing something with your family. So you want to tell us about that incident and how that influenced you?
Yes, when I was around that age, I was out in New York City at some point at nighttime, and I was by myself, no other witnesses. I think that figures into it when they do these things. And I was just looking up at the sky between 2 very tall buildings, and I had a sort of like a UFO that appeared above my head, and it was huge, and it had like those spinning lights in the bottom. It was just like on television at that time, and it just came down towards me, and then I felt that tremendous spotlight that went through my body. It was like a bluish greenish spotlight. Uh, Similar to the color in this picture right here. And it just went through me, and I believe it scanned and collected information about me, as I've found out from numerous witnesses since that time that I've spoken to who encountered the same spotlight. So anyway, then the UFO, at some point, 2 young ladies appeared on my left. And as I was in that spotlight, and they started screaming. And they just started screaming, "Little boy, you better run home." This story is in my book, The Extra-Dimensionals. And basically then those girls disappeared. And then I just stepped out of it. It's like they woke me up. I stepped out of that spotlight. And then the UFO reversed course. And it started going back up again into this black ink cloud that was up there. And went into the cloud. And then the cloud itself disappeared. And we could see the stars again. And that happened. And then a week later, I believe whatever information they collected was agreeable to them. And a week later, in my parents' home, I had a bunch of what I believed were little children come into my room it was about 3 in the morning. It was about 3 in the morning, and I was awake for some reason in my bed. And they just came into my room, and they started manipulating my body. I was stiff for some reason the room changed. I went stiff as a board, and they began to lift me up from the feet and the head. And I was like a half-filled helium balloon, and they just kind of started lifting me up, and then they started climbing on nothing. There was nothing, but they still started climbing up towards the ceiling. I saw the ceiling coming closer and closer to me. And then my forehead just banged against the ceiling, and they seemed very confused. They tried to put me through the ceiling because they themselves were passing through the ceiling very easily, and they were unable to put me through there. And they kind of lowered me, had me. Then they looked around, and they tried again, and they tried again, and they kept on doing that, and I kept on not going through. And so at that point, it was as if they were waking me from my stupor, whatever stupor was on me, by banging me against that ceiling. And I was starting to be able to move my neck a little bit. And my first thought was that maybe I was dead, and maybe my body was still in my bed. So I craned my neck as much as I could to look down, and no, it was just a bunch of ruffled sheets on there. And apparently, this was really happening. This was my physical body, apparently. And then they just looked down, and there were two more of those creatures that now I could see fully, because I was in a bedroom that just was separated from my parents' bedroom from by another door, and that door was now fully open all the way, and I could see into my parents' bedroom, and there were two more of these creatures that were just basically holding their hands over my parents' bed like this, and they were apparently keeping them asleep. And my parents looked like they were sweating and trying to wake up, but they couldn't. And so that went on. And then I locked eyes with the creature that was closest to me on the ground, on the ground. And he looked up at the other two that were with me. And he basically said to, and then now I saw their face. I could see that they were not small children, because I saw those alien kind of fully black wraparound eyes that were in their heads, and I could see that these were some types of foreign creatures, let's say. And he looked up at the other two that were with me, and he just said to them, "He's awake." And as soon as he said that, it was like the cord was cut, and I just fell like a sack of potatoes into the bed, fully heavy, back to normal heaviness, and they were gone. They were gone. And we had a lot more things that came out of that uh, and later on. But that was the initial experience that I had that told me that the things that are paranormal can be absolutely true. And especially um, when later on the next day, my parents were in full cover up mode, where they just wanted to cover this up, and they didn't want anybody, especially their kid talking to them about aliens and how these things were aliens and stuff like that. They did not want to hear that. And they didn't want, they only wanted to hear that this was a demonic attack. They were very religious. They were from a very religious group. And to them, it was very clear that this was some sort of a spiritual demonic attack that happened on our home, and that it had nothing to do with any sorts of alien creatures and so forth. So they worked really hard on that cover up, because they knew that our entire neighborhood would find out about what happened, and they were trying to prepare a cover story for that. So that was my initial experience when I actually learned about the need to be an investigator, and that was really helped me in my later. It determined my later professional life. Let's put it that way, and made it very important to me that you always have to find out the truth right down to the root, and find out exactly what's going on, especially when the authorities are trying to cover it up. And that's what I found out, even as a child as well.
So that would have been a really powerful experience, especially as it seems that you remembered all of what happened and adults around you tried to cover it up. So yeah, I could see how that would like inspire you to kind of become an investigator and join something like the FBI. So I mean, was that something that actually during your youth you thought, okay, I want to join the FBI because I want to investigate this kind of stuff? And
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was one of the primary motivating factors in that as well, that I was very interested. And it actually led me to, because I didn't know any better, when I went into the FBI, they give us, the process to become an FBI. It's just incredibly involved and laborious and very ongoing. They give us like a whole day of like the psychological tests, in just to just to look into the psychological aspect of your mind, to make sure that you're okay. And in all those questions, I always answered honestly about that. I did believe in UFOs and aliens. I did believe that was a real thing. So, as a result of that, they later on, the director of the FBI found out who I was and what I was doing, and he actually went to the psychological department, and they put in a bunch of paranormal type questions in the psychological evaluation. So, and they call them the D'Souza questions, and they put them all in there so that they'll never again have an FBI agent that believes in UFOs, believes in aliens. Oh, and hearing voices, that's a big one too. Hearing voices is a very easy way to disqualify a candidate. But you may know I do not hear voices. I perceive voices, which is a very different thing. So that's another thing that they were quite upset about. But before, it was very easy for people who were paranormal believers to become FBI agents, but that's not the case anymore. So that was one of the things I confronted when I actually got into the organization, and then I had other things that came up as well that also made me a very good candidate to handle some of these paranormal, and they would call them issues. They didn't even want to say investigations. They would call them paranormal issues that would come up, and that they would just basically dump my way, so that I could work on those as well.
we're fortunate that you got into the FBI, given your background and interests, and that that they only stopped that after you left. So I know you wrote a book, The Extra Dimensionals, that has done very well. It was a bestseller, The Extra Dimensionals, and you define the extra dimensionals as, quote, non-terrestrial intelligent life forms who are visiting our dimension of time and space as transitory beings from outside our plane of physical time and space,
Yeah.
e.g., from outside our existence, end quote. So you want to just elaborate on why it's important to define extra dimensionals this way? Because a lot of people think of extraterrestrials, but you're saying no, we've got to look at this as extra dimensional. So yeah,
Right.
just explain that.
Well, it's a little difficult to explain to people who aren't ready to hear this stuff, but I don't think you guys are among those people. I think you're ready. These alien creatures, the genuine alien creatures, the genuine UFOs, which are very very rare. I can tell you as well. They're not from other planets. They're not from outer space. They're not from other galaxies. They are actually from other dimensions. That's where they're from. And they are alien visitors, and they are not physical. They are not physical. They are not, even their UFOs that accompany them as well, are not really physical either. They are actually plasmas. which they're allowed to, they have conversion. They can convert from gas to light to gas to other things as well. And plasma is like probably the best way we have to describe it. So these genuine UFOs, these genuine alien visitors, they're simply translating from other dimensions that have nothing to do with our space. They have nothing to do with, and that's why Roswell was completely false. It was completely false. It was actually these hybrid type creatures. So in a sense, these hybrid creatures that had their bodies thrown in there, and these hybrid creatures were actually created. They were created creatures, but they were not physical. They were not. I mean, they were physical because they were created as physical, but they were not actual aliens in the Roswell craft. And that's because the Roswell craft itself was not a UFO as well. It was simply something that was created to ultimately make us believe that alien visitors are physical, that UFOs are physical, that they can just crash. They can just crash, and the alien bodies can just be scattered around on the road, just like humans could be. Just like humans go around in craft, and we can be crashed, and then we can end up as dead bodies by the road. Well, there is an agenda by the cabal to make us believe that aliens have what we call imminency, that they could show up at any time physically and just on the White House lawn and start handing out, goodies and important things for us to enjoy. And that's one of the main things that they have Hollywood helping them with that. They have Hollywood helping the scientific establishment with making us believe that alien visitors are physical and that they are just like us, but they're not. They're not like us at all. They actually have, like Jacques Vallée said many years ago, they actually have much more in common with spiritual phenomena than they do with us as physical phenomena. So that's one way of explaining the definition of what the extra-dimensionals are and why it is so important to the cabal to create these fake alien events all the time, because they want us to believe a different way of thinking with alien visitors than what I know is the truth. And that's one of the big things that they're always working on. That's why we have a line of fraud that goes from the alien hybrid bodies that were found in Roswell, and then that proceeds to other events where we have also found these fraudulent alien bodies that everybody says that they try to say at times are aliens. And I would point you to this tremendous investigation that went on in 2012. In 2012, when I would say Dr. Stephen Greer was the first one to bring forward, on a global scale, he was the first one to bring forward what we call this the Atacama creature, that was brought forward in the year 2012, and it was this 6-inch little creature that was presented as a real creature, and it had like a very alien appearance to it. And so the mainstream news did what they always do. They mislabeled it. They said, oh, that's the Atacama alien, so that later it could be debunked much easier than if they do that. So they did that, and they called it the Atacama alien. And then Dr. Greer brought that creature to Stanford Stanford University Science Department, and the infamous, what's his name? The infamous individual who
Gary
was,
Nolan?
yes, yes, exactly. So I have to be careful how I say this for legal reasons, but Gary Nolan at that time, and this everyone can look this up. At that time, he said to Dr. Greer and to all of us, he said, "I'm going to get to the truth on this, and I don't care. I don't care what the scientific establishment says. I'm going to get to the truth. I'm going to find." And he did the preliminaries on the gene searching on these things, and he said, "Oh, it appears to be a non-human creature." That's all Dr. Greer wanted. That's all anybody wanted, was not for them to find that it was an alien, but to find that it was a definite non-human creature that was apparently occupying the desert regions in the Atacama, right outside of, well, in Chile, and that's all they wanted, and that is what Nolan, what Gary Nolan promised would be found, because the preliminary tests showed that it was definitely a non-human creature, that it was not a fetus of any kind because it was so small, that it was indeed, it was something that had been existing for at least 40 years, it looked like. So Gary Nolan, he described it at that time as being a teenager type creature, because all the bones were fused, all of the things were, it definitely was not an infant, whatever it might have been, but it was a genuine creature, and it had been dead for only like a few years, it appeared. So then Gary Nolan said, "Okay, now we're going to do the deep DNA sequencing, the long-term sequencing, and then we're going to tell everybody what happened." And Gary Nolan said, "Oh, and we're definitely going to tell the truth on this, and but lo and behold, as it's reported by all the mainstream media that was working very closely with Gary Nolan, Gary Nolan came out with a finding that this creature, this Atacama creature," and I should have given you guys some pictures of this thing. But he came out with the finding that, guess what? Oh no, it was just it was a female human fetus after all. That's all it was. And that was heartbreaking to just not only to Dr. Greer, who he betrayed completely. I mean, he completely betrayed, but he also betrayed, I would argue, he betrayed science and the seeking of knowledge completely. He betrayed them, because this finding that he made, that this thing was just a female fetus. It was based on nothing. It was based on no science, because he would have made the genome sequencing public, because everybody wanted to see that, and he didn't, and he never will. He'll never show the genome sequencing that he did in order to reach that conclusion, because it's not genuine. It's not real, and it was a horrible betrayal, what he did, and and so it's just another example of, and I have to confess to your audience, I am an anti-scientist, because, and I'm talking about scientism as basically a religion, where science provides all the answers to life, which it does not. It absolutely does not. But in this case, it was used for what scientists have done. Basically, mainstream science has used science not to seek more knowledge, not to expand your knowledge or my knowledge, but to restrict knowledge as much as possible. And that's what they did in this instance too. and it's unbelievable. And I believe that Gary Nolan, as soon as he made this finding, he was given some huge awards from who? From Department of Defense of the United States. That's really strange coincidence. Very strange coincidence.
That is.
And there were several other things that went on also that really showed that this finding was really was not good. Was not good at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
And later on, then it was a very embarrassing thing. And and now to this day, Gary Nolan is out there and he's doing these conferences showing that he is in favor of finding the truth even today about these
Well,
UFOs and these types of
right.
different
Well,
types
well,
of
let's
creatures.
let's talk about that, because I know that the Soul Foundation, um, on the weekend of November 17, 18, did an event, a symposium, a 2-day symposium at Stanford
Yeah.
Medical Center, I think, with Dr. Nolan sponsoring that, and they were focusing on, well, I mean, the whole gamut, but of course there were people there like David Grush talking about the recovery of crashed UFOs and the bodies of non-human intelligence that were being studied in various corporate facilities. So, what do you think is going on there? I mean, because in a sense, what you've said is that the extra dimensionals, that this is more than just a physical phenomenon. But here you have a conference symposium saying, well, we know of crashed crafts, retrieved
Right.
craft, and bodies that are being studied, that
Mhm.
this is physical and science. So, yeah, you want to explain, what do you think's going on there?
Oh, well, let me tell you, first of all, I've been laughing and giggling from watching that conference. It is hilarious that that conference is going on and that they've got the greatest crisis actor that the cabal has ever put forward. What's his name? David Grush. That's it. David Grush. I mean, it was just, and the other people that are working with David Grush, who, as you may know, is being sponsored by the New York Times and Time Magazine as well, uh, and it's just incredible that all of these guys who are towing the the cabal line of how they believe they should be in charge of ufology and all of UFOs, and they they basically had this other character. What's his name? The guy who looks like Baron Harkonnen. Um, that guy who wears his collars like way up like this. I forget his name.
Are we
But
talking Klaus Schwab?
no, I was talking about I
Is
think
that the Australian journalist, Ross Coulthard? Is that who you're talking about?
oh, he's bad too. Yeah, that guy. I know who that guy is. Yeah, he's a bad character as well. But no, this is I'm talking about all the original UAP, all the UAP people who were saying that they had the ATIP in government that was
Oh,
working.
Luis Elizondo. Is
Yeah,
that who you
that's it.
mean?
That's it. And he was working with this group of people, and but basically the ATIP was proven to be a fraud. So so that happened, and then that was proven to be a fraud. Everything he was saying was proven to be not true. So he basically just rolled over to this new organization, the ARO, the AARO, and he said, oh no, I meant I was really talking about the ARO. That's where everything happened. It wasn't the ATIP. That was a mistake. It was a mistake. And so he changed everything over to the Arrow. And so now they're working with that story and trying to push that story forward of the Arrow being the organization in government that has been in charge of UFOs and all this stuff. But it's more of the same nonsense. And apparently, on that whole, because basically what's going on is we have an entire structure of these UAPs. Okay, we're now saying this UAP phenomena, and the UAPs are very obviously they are man-made. They are man-made, and they actually have a whole campaign, a press campaign behind them to popularize them and to show that they're the most important thing in ufology right now. And they have all these actors, well, mostly crisis actors, who are behind them as well, and saying, "Oh no, the Tic Tacs and all of these things—they're real, and they are." And they don't say they're alien craft. What they do is they use these CIA mind phrases, mind control phrases, and they're very careful about that. But they all say the same thing. They look up meaningfully, and they say these Tic Tacs, these vehicles that we're seeing all the time, having near misses with our airplanes and all these things, and that keep appearing in our skies, not just in this nation, but in many nations across the earth. These Tic Tacs, they are definitely proof that we are not alone. And then they look up and they say it like that. It's just that's a CIA mind control phrase to suggest alien vehicles, alien creatures, and all that. And that's something that's very important to them. And that's what people don't understand. Like, why would they do this? Why do they do all this fakery? Like this conference that's going on that you referred to, the Saul, the oh my gosh, Gary Nolan makes me laugh. With Gary Nolan and crisis actor David Grush and all these things.
Well, I think you hit on a very important point, and that is that I know a lot of those witnesses that are coming forward, David Grush, but you can go back to Bob Lazar, and of course the Eric Davis and many others, that they say, well, these craft that are being seen, that these cannot be ours, that these are like, non-human intelligence, that they've crashed and they're being studied, but they're too advanced. We don't know what they are. So they create this kind of cloud of confusion that we don't know what they are, and we can't reverse engineering. Whereas a lot of the information I've gotten is that, these were reverse engineered a long time ago, and the Tic Tac craft and many other craft that are seen are actually part of a secret space program. So, you want to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, they keep creating these scenarios where they show you that the Tic Tacs are they're definitely not made by humans. No, there's no way. They do things and they say things, and they are able to do things that our technology cannot do. Well, I mean, and we all know about the reverse engineering that went on, since Roswell, when those materials were transferred over to Area 51, and then those materials were used to create probably these crafts. And this was all done by our aerospace companies. Well, which ours? These are global aerospace companies that do these things and that create these things. And they're very obviously they're there. They are all over the place now, and we're coming up to a time when David Grush and what's his name, Gary Nolan, will ultimately step forward at the head of, let's call it, an armada of many of these Tic Tacs, who will probably be supplemented with the blue beam technology, and will be supplemented with many other things. And we will hear from Gary Nolan and David Grush that they are in contact with these fleets of UAPs, and that so we have to listen to them, and they're going to tell us what the aliens want. That's the situation we're coming to. And another person that's going to be at the head of that armada as well, of course, is the individual Jaime Maussan from Mexico, because he is very deeply involved in this. And I mean, I can tell you a quick story. I don't know if you guys work with Gaia TV at all, but I have worked with them extensively in the past. And so I think this was in like 2018 or so, when Gaia TV, they first got into possession of all of these hybrid bodies, I'll call them alien hybrid bodies, that were coming out of Peru. I think it was Peru, I'm pretty sure. And they were coming out of Peru, and there were like dozens and hundreds of them. It was incredible. And they were all genuine bodies, because when they did the x-rays, you could see that there were internal organs. These things were genuine creatures. So when I was over there, and this is to show you what scientism is. When I was over there, I was lobbying to be the investigator who works with these things, with all of these things that Gaia was going to do huge presentations on. And I told them, I said, I should be the one that, is with these creatures and with all of this. And they told me, oh yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, we'll probably do that. And then they told me, oh no, we're going to have the investigator who comes in to help when we send all these things out to the laboratories and so forth. The investigator is going to be Jaime Maussan. And of course, myself and all the producers there at Gaia TV told the power structure, the CEO, we told him, but if you use Jaime Maussan, he's already been proven to have worked with frauds in the past that have been exposed. So why would you want Jaime Maussan to be working with the creatures, the hybrid creatures coming out of Peru? That doesn't make any sense. They said, oh, no, that's what we're doing. We're just doing it because he's already famous in Mexico, and we're going to do a connection to Mexico later on. And that's the reason. And that was it. So, I started looking at that, and I started thinking also, I was telling them, hey, if you guys send exemplars of all of these cadavers, all of these I forget what they called them, the creatures that came out of Peru. But if you start say again,
mummies.
Yes, that's right. That's right. They called them the alien mummies that were coming out of Peru. And that's what they did. They called them the mummies. And so then I told them, but if you guys send these to labs that are here in the States, the labs are just going to give you false results, because those labs have to be licensed every year. And if they come out with a determination that one of these mummies is even non-human, for sure, if they even say that, they will lose their licenses. They know that. So you're just going to get a bunch of false results from labs, or you're going to get findings of indeterminate, undetermined. That's it. That's all you're going to find. And I told them that. And I said to them, you would have to use labs that are not in the United States. It's the only way. It's the only way, because other countries aren't as controlled as the United States is with their scientific structure. But labs here in the United States will absolutely, and I knew that for a fact because of all the work I've done in the past with Bigfoot people and crypto creature people, who have always gotten tissue samples, hair samples, and have always sent those samples to labs here in America, and have always gotten back an undetermined, not able to determine, things like that. But they went ahead and ignored my advice, and they went ahead and sent all the Peruvian mummies, all the alien mummies. They sent all the tissue samples to to labs here in the United States all across the board. And of course, it rolled out exactly the way I said. In every case, they either gave them undetermined or they gave them, no, it's totally human DNA,
Mhm.
which is even visually, your common sense tells you that that's not true.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because I know that in the last few months there have been two meetings at the Mexican Congress where Jaime Maussan and a few others represented all that data, but now they called upon a bunch of experts, but I don't believe those experts were US experts. They were
Good.
kind of Mexican and elsewhere around the world, and they were pretty unanimous that these were non-human. They didn't say they were extraterrestrial. They just said that these are non-human. So I guess eventually he must have learned not to use US laboratories.
Yes. Well, yeah, Michael, you may know in the United States, our scientific community is so controlled. I mean, it's so controlled. I mean, beyond reason, even where, I mean, if if one lab finds something that is outside the norm and puts that in, they'll find out about it, and that whole lab will be decommissioned and will not be given a license. That kind of control, it seems for some reason it doesn't exist in other countries. It doesn't really make sense, except that the scientific community in the United States is just it's a farce. It's just a farce because it's not trying to help you, find new knowledge. Look, if you can go back in publications and look at 1901, when the scientific in the year 1901, when the scientific community was fighting tooth and nail not to recognize the what do you call the gorilla, the gorilla from Africa as being a real creature. They all were saying, no, that's a myth. That doesn't exist. It's not real, because they were concerned that it would explode evolution as a theory. If the mountain gorillas were found to be still living creatures, because they were supposed to be a part of evolution. So, I mean, the scientific community just fought tooth and nail not to recognize, until hunters eventually just brought the mountain gorillas out to show that they were real living creatures that everyone had to recognize as being real. And that was a huge firestorm for the scientific community, because they are not interested in bringing you new information. And we saw the same exact thing happen with the Atacama creature that was revealed in 2012. Because I'm not arguing that thing was an alien, definitely not. What I'm arguing is it was a legitimate form of life from Earth, that exists in the Atacama region in Chile. And we've had other creatures like the Keystum alien creature as well in Russia, in Keystum, Russia, that was also revealed years. I think it was back in the 90s. I think it was back in the 90s. And that creature was a very similar creature too. It was about 12 inches tall, and it had been living with a Soviet woman in her home in the Keystum region of Russia, and she had kept it as a kind of a bird, and it made bird sounds, and then it had a long life, and it died. It was about a foot tall. It was black. It appeared sort of black, but it wasn't a belligerent creature. But it was alien looking in its sense. And then some Soviet police officers found it, and they made up a story that was then that they had found it as a cadaver in the back out in the desolate regions out there in Kishtim. And then the Soviet scientific board then got a hold of the cadaver, and they made up a whole story about it. They made up a whole genome. They were going to examine the DNA and all that, and they basically just used the same script. They did all the examinations of this creature, which was apparently was a local creature, indigenous creature in that Kishtim region. And they decided to say at the end of all of their examinations, their DNA, they did have a form of DNA examination at that time. And they said after all that, oh, no, this creature was just a female fetus, a human, fully human fetus that was just, discarded there. And that's all it was. The same analysis as was done with the Atacama creature as well. So this kind of stuff is just cover-up activities, and it goes on all the time with scientists and science.
Well, I want to ask you about a leaked document, a leaked majestic document that's dated 1989. And it's controversial like all of the majestic documents, but what I wanted to kind of show you was that it describes 4 types of extraterrestrials, and I wanted to get your reaction to the different types of extraterrestrials it describes. So, I mean, we do have a screenshot of the cover of this document in case you haven't seen it, but it describes 4 types of EBE. So that's that's the cover of that document. It was apparently it was dated 1989, and it was leaked or released into the public around 2017 from Heather Wade, who was working at the time with Art Bell. In the document, there's a section that describes 4 types of EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, and the 4 types were were Earth-like humanoids, B, small humanoids or greys, C, non-humanoid EBE, so there we can talk maybe about insectoids, reptilians, and so forth. And then the final category, transmorphic entities. And so this would be kind of like the extra dimensionals that you mentioned. So yeah, do you want to, I don't know if you know that document, but do you want to talk about those 4 types of extraterrestrial biological entities? Do you think that's accurate or not?
Well, I mean, everything's an interpretation. So, I mean, this list gives me a little bit of amusement, because it's like, well, category A is Earth-like humanoid, so they're just humans, basically. I mean, is that the first category? I mean, it has to pass the common sense test when you look at these things. And but they're Earth-like humanoids. They're more or less like ourselves, it says. So they're basically humans that just have a high degree of psychic ability. And okay,
They come from outer space.
They come from outer space. So that's the defining, the only distinguishing characteristic there. Okay. And, and the Greys, of course, we all know that the Greys are kind of like the little workhorses of all the alien cultures. So yeah, of course, that's going to be somewhat accurate as far as we can see. And non-human EBEs, and I've discussed these documents in the past with Heather Wade extensively, but I have not seen these categories. And there are the non-human EBEs. Oh, I see. So they're like non-human, but they're like physical. That's what it is, it seems like. Many of these are dangerous. Wow. Not because, well,
yeah. So I think they're talking about like reptilians, insectoids, arachnoids, that kind of thing.
And then the last one is transmorphic EBEs, which are of they do not use device. Oh, that's the whole extra dimensionals thing. Okay. That's what they're saying there. Okay. They're not beings or creatures. They exist in another dimension or plane, which is not in our space. They do not use devices or travel in space. These are entities that are pure mind energies. Okay, I see. I see. This is basically separating out extra dimensionals into another category, different from the non-human EBEs. But yeah, so a lot of this stuff looks very accurate. But the only thing that I believe personally is that these these categories tend to overlap each other as it is, because I believe all the uh, all the alien creatures are transmorphic entities. That's a good way. That's a good thing to have, uh, to know, because I believe that they're all non-physical from other dimensions that have nothing to do with our space, and that the UFOs basically accompany them, like it says under D here, as transmorphic entities. They don't need the UFOs. They don't need, because they don't travel in craft like we do. But the UFOs accompany them, kind of like as familiars, as lesser beings that carry out small tasks for them. That's how I believe the UFOs accompany them, and why they accompany them. That's the reason. So, and yeah, they are more of like a spiritual phenomenon. But I'll tell you something else. I also believe that reptilians and insectoid and other even dark entities, I believe that they're also transmorphic as well, and that they travel here. And I believe, and a lot more people are believing this stuff too, that it appears that even when reptilians come here, reptilians and insectoids, that they are also transmorphic, and they tend to be what we call walk-ins, so that they actually have to occupy a physical body that is here already, that is already here. And so they can come and they can manifest physically, but only if they get to use a physical being to be their bridge, kind of, into our realm. That's how I believe it really all works. That's how it goes. Except, and maybe it works that way for grays too. I don't know, but we encounter grays so much that they really seem to have a separate kind of physical existence. But that also could be temporary as well. They may not be able to keep that physicality for very long periods.
Well, in your book, The Extra Dimensionals, you do have a chapter on the Space Brothers, and you mentioned George Van Tassel and Billy Meyer. So, and of course, they're cases where you have these human-looking extraterrestrials landing on spacecraft, coming out, meeting people, and so forth. So, are you saying that that they are a kind of like a projection of extra-dimensional beings coming from another dimension, and that they just kind of like manifest a physical body and a spacecraft,
Yes.
just temporarily?
Yes, but also that's kind of what gives them this tremendous power to appear as different species, depending on what the situation calls for. And one of the things I can tell you guys a quick story. You had in 1975 in Sitgraves, Arizona, we had one of our citizens, Travis. Travis, who was taken on and he was a very young man, like 20 years old at the time, but he was taken onto a spaceship that had a very plasma-like appearance, glowing lights and things like that. And it was about a 60-foot diameter. And then he was, and this is just an example of extradimensionality, he was then brought on board this ship, because the ship had not known about him, and they actually took off and gave off a bolt of energy that basically struck him dead on the ground. So they became aware of that. They came back, and then they brought him on board, and they put on him some kind of device that was supposed to revive him. And so he had 3 grays that were that were situated around him on the table, and just trying to get him to lay flat on the table where the device was attached to him that was making him better. I mean, it had obviously already awoken him and he was alive, but they wanted him to stay longer with the device on his chest. And so they were trying to hold him down. So he decided to become belligerent, and he started pushing the Greys around. He started pushing them. Anyway, they fled in fear. They fled and they went to another section of the ship, which apparently, talk about extra-dimensionality, the ship happened to open up into areas that were as big as outdoor stadiums. That's how big the area inside that ship was. It's huge. It's immensely huge. And so they went running in fear. And then this is what I have posited. Then 3 creatures came back to ultimately, I mean, after Travis had finished wandering around and going all over the place and walking through these big stadium areas that were huge, huge. He finally came back to the general area to try to figure out how to get out. And he came back to the same area, and he was met there by 3 creatures that moved on him in a very similar way to the way that the 3 Greys had moved on him, except now they were Nordics. Okay. They were Nordics. They were large, very good-looking humans, it seemed like. And there were 2 males and 1 female. And they were very large. And they moved and advanced on him just the way the Greys had, except now they were able to hold him down on the table very easily because they were so large. So the what I posited to Travis and also to the readers as well is that it appeared to me that because these creatures are extra-dimensional, because they are only temporarily physical, if at all, then they are able to change their form, their species form. And I believe that those 3 Nordics who ultimately encountered Travis and held him down on that table were the same exact beings that were the 3 Greys that he chased away. They just came back with different clothing. And that's what I believe. That's a part of extra dimensionality. That species really doesn't mean anything to them. It means just a set of clothing that they can change at will. And I believe that's what happened there. That was an excellent example of that, because they came back, they held him down on that table, and they told him to sit still. And then they were able to basically transport him back and send him back down to where he came from. And that's what happened there. And that's kind of an example of extra dimensionality, or the other word that they use in that majestic list. I like that transformic, whatever that was. Morphogenic.
Yeah, transmorphic entities.
Morphic entities. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is very interesting. I do wonder though. I mean, a lot of people talk about the ability of some of these extraterrestrial groups, such as the Greys and the reptilians, to be able to project into the mind of the abductee or an experiencer whatever they want them to witness. So it may not be that like a reptilian being, for example, that projects an image of, say, a normal-looking human. They might not be themselves a transmorphic, unless you think that all reptilians are ultimately transmorphic, but they could be just like a reptilian being that's projecting into the consciousness of someone like Travis Walton, or like the Greys did with Travis, a human-looking being to make the person feel comfortable or whatever.
Right. Well, another thing I believe they use, that they use at times, is I believe that when they I got this from the great Jim Nichols, one of the greatest investigators who ever looked into this stuff, the writer of Alien Agenda, great book, and that it's these abduction experiences. The reason they're sort of like have this dreamy sort of quality to them is because it's very possible that the alien creatures, the genuine alien creatures, they are somehow able to transport the human consciousness to a sort of pocket dimension, a dimension where they control everything. And that's why they have total control whenever where they make the pocket dimension look exactly like your physical reality where you just were. You just were there. So you assume no disruption in continuity, and you assume, well, I'm still here. It's just that these aliens are here now who have total control over my body. How is that possible? Well, it's possible, I think, because they are morphogenic beings who are not comfortable in physical reality, and that they may be transporting the victim, I won't say victims, the individuals, the abductees, to this kind of like pocket dimension. A lot of these things, we don't even have language to describe it. We're just trying the best we can to describe these realities that are so foreign to us that it makes it very difficult to explain. But yeah, but I believe there's a very strong possibility that that's what's happening in these abductions as well. And so people are just fooled into believing that they're still on the physical plane where they just were, but they're really not. And that's why the alien creatures have so much control over sovereign beings, which doesn't really fit with our physical plane as we know it.
Well, I want to talk to you about the Billy Meyer case that you mentioned in the Extra-Dimensionals, and of course, he met with these Nordic extraterrestrials, and famously, you have Sem Jasse, this beautiful female that Billy Meyer met. Now, he got a lot of predictions. I mean, he was given a lot of predictions about the future, and he predicted kind of events very similar to what's happening now. You know, these riots in France, and he predicted a civil war in the United States, which, appeared ridiculous at the time, but now it's looking more and more like, wow, was he really given information about the future from these Nordics? So, what do you think of that? Like Billy Meyer, his meetings with these Nordics, all these predictions that seem to be coming true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've looked into that, and it appears that Billy Meyer's early stuff, his early material, appeared to be very genuine, very authentic. However, later material, it just seems like he was no longer being contacted, and he just kind of generated a lot of things and stuff. But I try not to talk about that too much, because the Billy Meyer's organization still exists. And then if you say anything about them, about their stuff, they tend to come and bother people. So that's why I try not to talk about Billy Myers very much at all. I'm surprised you haven't experienced that, Michael.
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah, because that guy, I mean, he is on the spot. Anybody who says anything about Billy Myers, and the truth is obvious in itself. I mean, it's on its own face. It's obvious that Billy Myers' early stuff appeared to be very genuine, very authentic, and and especially because the predictions, they basically mostly came true. But the later stuff was just, I mean, it just looks like nonsense. Go ahead.
Right. I remember spending a little bit of time with Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens. I'm sure you know of him or even met him. But he worked with Billy Meyer at the beginning, and he said that the prophecies of Billy Meyer were accurate, that there was some element there that was very accurate when it came to predictions. And he thought it was maybe some kind of time travel technology that they had, that they could see the future.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Nordics were just very, very interesting. Anywhere that they popped up, anywhere that they showed themselves, it was always very interesting. Of course, anyone who looks into this area has to address Billy Meyer's material and how important it was really to this area. And so I think it'll always continue to be important to our area. But people still have to be able to use their own common sense when they're looking at the later material that came out of there, which is very, very different. Very different.
Well, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit now and go to your another one of your books, Clear Hearers, where you describe an inner voice, because I think that takes us into this kind of whole religious realm.
Yeah.
And of course, what is this inner voice that people are hearing? And so, you want to maybe just explain to my listeners, what is Clear Hearers all about?
Clear Hearers is all about the ability that humans have to be able to perceive the voice of their higher self. There is a version of every human being that already is with God, is already existing outside of time and space, because time and space doesn't exist for them. So therefore, they're already there, and they kind of remember you as a human being. They kind of remember what it was like to be a little piece of flesh and bone trying to get stuff on an earth. It would be kind of like an elephant trying to remember what it was like to be an ant. And there's not too much they can do to help us, but they can do some things. So that is the voice of the clear hearer, is the great voice that comes to them from love, basically, because this entity, this creature, was you at some point. And so they are trying to reach back. They are drawn back to who you are as in this temporary kind of state that you're in. And they try to help you as much as possible. And so the Clear Hearers is filled with experiences where the great voice has come back to people to help them, sometimes even to save their lives in moments of crisis, because it serves the higher purpose of the universe. And they know what those higher purposes are. Now, the bad news is that, and I have to tell you this because I know it's true, the cabal has read my book, The Clear Hearers. And the way I know that is because they're using their own technology to give people messages and make it look like it is their own clear hearing voice. They're doing that by sending people messages and then making it in their own voice. In their own voice, there's a bunch of qualifiers to make sure that something is the clear hearing voice. Okay, they created voices that come to people in their own voice, give them short, clear messages that are supposed on the surface are supposed to be helping them in a positive way. All right. So this has been going on. It's been documented by great thinkers in our society, like David Icke, like Cliff High as well. They've both documented many instances of people receiving these messages that are not their voice, that come to them with a wave of emotion, comforting emotion, that tells them to do things that are not in their best interests. That's how we know it is not the clear hearing voice, that it is a voice from nefarious sources. And that is what is going on today. And it's been going on quite a bit. And that's the reason why we need to learn how to distinguish our own clear hearing voice so that we can know when it's happening and when it's not. So that when these counterfeit voices, like everyone knows about this voice to skull technology that is being used by governments all over the world, and it's very sophisticated at this point. And what we have found out is that the cabal doesn't just depend on that. It doesn't just depend on voice to skull technology. It also, apparently, it seems to depend on a sort of sorcery, some kind of sorcery that they use. And the way I know that is because when the cabal was trying to convince everyone to take this. I don't know how I can say it. How to take this this we usually say the chick thing that they wanted everyone to take in the arm, and they kept on sending messages around that said to everyone, just take the V, just take it, take the V, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. And then they accompanied that with feelings of warmth and comfort and good feelings, and that's what happened. Well, we had an individual, Cliff High, actually investigated a bunch of people who had received these messages, and he in Montana, and he went and he investigated them in areas where they had no radio signal, they had no telephone cell towers, they had no way to possibly receive an electronic signal of any kind, and yet they still received these messages that I'm telling you about right now. And so his conclusion was at that time that, and I believe his conclusion is correct, that the cabal is using voice to skull technology, but also using some sort of sorcery to generate these voices and these messages to people when they want them to receive a certain message. I believe that is going to be used in the very near future to tell people in their own voice, to tell people, hey, the aliens are just here to help you. Just do whatever they say. Do whatever they say. That's it. And they're going to be saying some wacky stuff. I can tell you
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's very important that you mentioned that voice to skull or voice of God technology, because that's been around for some time. I remember Nick Begich, Dr. Nick Begich wrote a book about that, where he documented all the patents and showed how this voice to skull technology is very real. But I want to just kind of raise another possibility, as in addition to what you just described, and I want to bring up the biblical case of Abraham, where he was told, sacrifice his only son or his firstborn son Isaac. And so, what voice was he hearing? And of course, there was, sacrifice your son. So he was about to do that, and then he hears another voice saying, "Oh, it's okay. You did great. Don't worry, it's all right." So, are we talking about two voices here? Was one like a trickster god? Yahweh is a kind of trickster, and was he also listening? And did that voice that came in and say, "Don't do this," that was like his higher self? So, do you want to maybe elaborate on that, Abraham and Isaac, because that seems to be fundamental to the Judeo-Christian Islamic faiths?
Absolutely. As we all know, Abraham was directed by God the Father, to take his son Isaac up to an altar and to possibly sacrifice him. And it was, and to anyone who believes in God and believes that God is true, God is perfectly consistent. There is nothing inconsistent in God at all. And so it was all one voice. It was all one voice that came to him and told him to show his faith. And one thing Abraham knew, just like God knew, was that through his son Isaac was going to be birthed the nation that would favor God in general. And so the part that didn't make sense was not him stopping him from killing him. The part that didn't make sense was, why would he do it in the first place, of asking him to sacrifice him? But I believe it was just a test of faith, of Abraham, because Abraham would give birth to the most important nation for God that ever would be. And so for that reason, God made this extraordinary test of Abraham's faith, to be willing to even consider the possibility of sacrificing the father of nations, which was Isaac, his son, the only son he had at that point that could do that. I believe fully that was definitely the voice of God, and that God was Elohim, Yahweh, God the Father, however you want to call him, and that he was perfectly consistent in the voice that he gave later, saying, "No, don't kill him. It's fine. You've demonstrated what I wanted you to demonstrate, and you guys can just go home, call it a day now." And as a matter of fact, here is a ram that is now presented to you, who has its horns caught in a thicket right next to where you are. And now you can use that ram and make that the sacrifice, which it should have been right from the beginning. And I believe that that was done, and I think that was perfectly consistent for God.
Okay, well, one of the things that certain researchers such as Paul Wallace and Mauro Bellino and even Cliff High have said is that, in fact, that there are two gods in the Bible. One God is the wrathful, vengeful Yahweh or Jehovah that it commanded the Israelites to exterminate kind of like other tribes, the Canaanites and the Moabites and the giants, that these are kind of like, just vicious, exterminate them all, exterminate the women, exterminate the children, and then on the other hand, you have Jesus or Yeshua praying to this all-loving God, where it's, not exterminate your neighbor, but it's like love thy neighbor as thyself. And so a lot of these researchers say, well, in fact, there are two gods in the Bible, and one God, Yahweh, is in fact this extraterrestrial, like an Elohim. And some say this is like Enlil, the sky god. So where do you kind of like weigh in on that debate?
No, I believe that God is absolute, that God is perfectly consistent today, yesterday, and every day, and always will be. And but it was a different time in the Old Testament. And what we had going on in the Old Testament was we had tremendous corruption of the DNA bloodlines. We had tremendous corruption, and we had entire nations that were corrupted in their DNA bloodlines as well. And that for that reason, God the Father had to wipe them out, basically wipe them out. And that means children, women, everything they've got. And that was the reason why. That's also a large part of the reason for the original flood, the diluvian reality that occurred at the time of Noah, is because the bloodlines were on purpose were corrupted by these creatures. A lot of these fallen angels, we would call them Anunnaki as well, and they did everything to basically, and because God loved humanity, pure humanity, like Noah was described many times, people who are pure in their DNA bloodlines, who do not have any animal DNA, any alien DNA, anything of any sort, that was considered so precious to God that he actually had to protect it because of his love for humanity, as that he did have to do entire what people like to call the racial cleansing of these other peoples. And yeah, that did have to happen. And it was perfectly important and necessary to happen as well. And it has, and under Jesus, we had a reformation because these types of things were no longer necessary, supposedly. Supposedly now our DNA bloodlines are purely human, I would hope. And so now there's no, that's why Jesus was able to reform everything from the old law to his new covenant that he put forward as well, which was to love each other as you would love yourselves, and to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul. So everything changed, but it was not because God changed. It was because times changed. And these other DNA corruptions were successfully wiped out, or I hope.
Mhm.
And so there was no need anymore for that sort of
Okay, well, I just wanted to kind of follow up because this is one of the issues that people like Paul Wallace and Bellino and others point out, that in fact the God, the singular God that many people interpret in the Bible or the Old Testament was in fact the plural sorry,
you can do it.
plurality of gods,
Right.
and that was like the Elohim, and that the Elohim, they were a multiplicity of gods, that there was never just one all-powerful God, that was just an interpretation that was imposed by these Jewish scholars in the 6th century BC, because they wanted to move the Hebrews, who were polytheistic at that time, to this monotheistic faith in one all-powerful God. So yeah, so I mean, I think when you look at the Bible, I mean, you can say that it does seem to be at times talking about a plurality of gods, the
Well,
Elohim.
yeah. Well, the only plurality of gods that there is God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But they are all part of a single Godhead. They're all part of a single Godhead, and they express themselves in different ways at different times. But they're all, again, part of the same Godhead. There is only one God, and that is God the Father. That is, Elohim, Yahweh. And I'm not that familiar with the theory of the Elohim that you were talking about, but there's many. I've encountered that argument before, and I don't believe that it is true, or it is deconstructive of the true God that exists and that has always existed. But no, I don't believe there's any sort of manifestation in the Bible that proves that kind of thing. I mean, whenever the Bible refers to we as gods or other people as gods, I believe it's in a sense figurative when they do that, and I believe that God is always the same, always, no matter what. So that's just how I see things, and I think that Jesus also addresses that in several places as well. The truth and the reality of the one God that exists.
Well, this takes me to something that is very relevant to what's happening today, and that is the references in the Bible, like the book of Ezekiel and the book of Revelations, that talk about Gog and Magog, that this seems to be some kind of end times attack on Israel that is somehow interpreted to be this kind of end of days war, where the people of the one God fight against those that are part of this kind of antichrist, or this kind of like false messiah. So what do you think is happening now in terms of contemporary events in the Middle East? Is this truly a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, or is someone, the cabal, trying to manifest a regional war to make it look like it's part of biblical prophecy?
Yeah, well, it's all of the above. Yeah, definitely. The cabal is working hard to make some of these things come true. They need that. They need the world war. They need it. They're desperate for it, because that's what they need for the military-industrial complex to come back to power, which right now it's in bad shape. And the Gog and Magog, I believe, were actually names for Russia and another country, which which escapes me right now. But yeah, I believe that's
Turkey?
yeah, I think that's it. Yes, I believe it's Russia and Turkey. Yeah, and but of course they're going to have other nations with them when they are fulfilling prophecy as well. And it's not that the that I believe that the Israelis, the Jews, are some sort of, well, they were, of course, as chosen people, but it's not that I believe they are somehow superior or better than anybody else. It's just that they are always going to have a special connection to God and to Christ right up until the end. That's what it is. They're going to have that sort of special connection to where they will never, God will never allow them to be just destroyed. They will never allow them to be destroyed, and we've seen that that's true. There's a freaking country the size of New Jersey that is existing, surrounded by 100 million Arabs that hate them, and they still haven't been able to destroy them. So there's something supernatural going on there. And yes, I do believe that we are seeing right now with this world war that's shaping up right in the Middle East. We have a world war. I don't know if many people know, but the other day, just the other day, I don't think this was reported by news. The United States Navy just sank a bunch of ships from Iran, from Persia. And it just happened the other day. And it was like they sunk a lot of their ships. And nobody said anything about it. So this world war is coming. It's here now. It's here now. And it's happening. And the cabal is dying for this because they need it. Because if they don't get their world war, and they tried it with the Ukraine-Russia situation, they tried to get as much engagement out of us as they could, and people just weren't falling for it. They just weren't. So they had to real quick shift gears, change gears, and move over to this Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which now they know that's going to engage everybody. It's going to engage all Americans. It's going to engage everybody, and that's what they're hoping for. Because let me tell you, I think you probably know Hezbollah, Hamas, the Palestinians, Netanyahu, the IDF, they're all being manipulated by the cabal. They all are. They're all being moved like chess pieces by the cabal. And so people just have to realize that both sides are being manipulated by the cabal, especially Netanyahu, when he's saying that he didn't know anything about that cross-border attack by Hamas that happened to kick off the whole thing. You know, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous for them to say that they didn't know that was going to happen. When people in the military know that you can't even have a bird fly over that border without them knowing, without the IDF knowing about it. So anyway, but the overarching point is, this is all manipulation. It's all manipulation. Please don't stand for Ukraine. Don't stand for Russia. Don't stand for Israel. Don't stand for the Palestinians. Stand for America, because that's where you're going to survive or not. And that's what you need to stand for. That's what you need to realize, that this is all manipulated. It's all manipulated, every last bit of it. So we have to basically educate ourselves on what is coming next. What is coming next? Because the world war, it's here now. It's here. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I want to kind of like raise that point. What's coming next? Because I agree with everything you said. I think this was a staged attack, that the cabal playing both sides against each other. That's the classic problem reaction solution that David Icke talks about. Now, it does look like, though, that things are calming down, that they're moving towards some sort of ceasefire, that they're going to get other parties to agree and so forth, and that even though there are those that want to widen the war and start attacks on Iran, looks like things are cooling down, which then kind of raises the possibility, well, what's next? Is the US going to experience kind of like attacks, terrorist attacks, which then gets the US kind of like what happened with the 9/11 attacks, but now it'll be blamed on Iran, and so then you have the regional war. So what do you think is going to happen next?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's going to happen next is this. If anyone, please don't listen to mainstream media. Please go to alternative sources. We have this list of 17 cities, sometimes 17, 15. The number changes a little bit, but it's a list that is coming out from the FBI and the State Department. And the State Department is naming many of our cities as being as being basically in the queue for these tremendous terrorist attacks that are coming. And that list, it has many cities on it. It also has Phoenix, Arizona on it, and even Tucson, Arizona. So that's why I've been having conferences and presentations to tell people what to do, how to protect themselves, because these are coming. These are coming, and it's this ridiculous thing where our government tells us, "Oh well, yeah, we know these attacks are coming, but we don't. There's nothing we can do about it. Stop it. No, we can't. That's it. So deal with it." And now we have to deal with it because I'm trying to think all the different cities that are on those lists. But please look up those lists, and those we have terrorist attacks that are imminent. And now they're saying that the attacks are probably going to be more on infrastructure, that they're going to be coordinated. They're all going to happen in one day. In one day, all of these attacks across the country to our major cities and some not so major. And they're going to be happening all at the same time on the same day. But now they're saying that it's probably going to be on infrastructure because they want to shut down these cities completely as a prelude maybe to something else. Because remember, we also have these millions of illegal aliens that have been pouring across our southern border and that no one has vetted them, thanks to the government that's in charge of the United States, supposedly, right now. And we have no way to know who these people are. And so these people, I believe, are also waiting for a purge signal, some kind of purge signal to tell them to activate. We've recently had some data that some of these illegal aliens are poured over the border have also had UN cards provided to them by the United Nations for expenses and other things. And they had those cards. So that kind of says a little bit about them because a lot of these aliens pouring across the border appear to be military individuals, military age and military appearance as well. So we have to be ready for all of this. And because this attack on the cities, I believe, is the next thing that's coming. And it's coming very, very soon. So people have to prepare themselves, defend themselves, and don't be shocked. Don't be shocked. Don't go into a panic when it happens. Have a plan to protect yourself, to hunker down, to do whatever you need to do. Make sure you have your supplies. Make sure you have your guns, anything you need for protection, self-protection, and just so that you can weather this storm when it does come, and just don't be in a panic like everybody else is going to be.
So what do you think? Just assuming that these attacks happen as you have outlined, and there's probably going to be an attempt to blame Iran for this and to kind of get the US to go to war with Iran, and therefore expand the what's happening in Israel-Palestine and what's happening in Ukraine, to expand that by a war that's launched against Iran. So do you think that will happen, or do you think there's enough awareness, enough people are know of these false flag attacks that the American government or the military will kind of step in or say, no, we're not going to do that?
Yeah, they may. We may have. But at this point, we can't. I don't think we can depend on our own government at this point. And I do think these attacks are going to happen because past proves future, and we've seen so much preparation going into this, so much happening across the country, and it's just seems very based on evidence, it just seems very obvious that these things are going to go forward, and they can blame whoever they want for whatever. At this point, people are so aware of these false flags that I don't think anyone's gonna believe that Iran is responsible, or Hezbollah or Hamas. I don't believe that Hamas has enough people to attack all of the United States. I believe at this point, it's basically our own government's going to take the blame for whatever they do. And I think that's the way it should be. And I don't think, I'm thinking and I'm hoping that people do not buy into this nonsense of, Iran did it, Iraq did it, or Israel did it, or even Hamas did it, or Hezbollah did it. It's just not. I don't think it's going to fly. I don't think it's going to fly at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think enough people are awake that they're not going to fall for that kind of blaming some other country for these attacks that they suspect are part of a kind of like deep state operation. So that then leads to, what will be the deep state's next move? Is that when they roll out the alien false flag attack?
Exactly. It's going to be their final card. When everything else fails, everything else goes down, everything else doesn't work, nothing else gains traction, nothing else is really working for them, they're going to have to go to their final card, just like Werner von Braun told us. It's going to be the fake alien invasion card. And they have so much resources they can throw behind that, between blue beam, what else? Weather control that they can use in concert with that. All of these things. I mean, they're going to be using every resource out there. Oh, the voice to skull technology as well. They're going to be using every resource to back up and duplicate and multiply this UAP attack that's going to be happening to all of us. And it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. But like everything that the cabal does, they always need, and this should be a comfort to people, they always need some level of voluntariness. They need some level of agreement. You have to agree to take the at your own volition, of your own free will, because these things are also spiritual realities, and the spiritual realities cannot go forward unless you agree. So even when it comes to this fake alien invasion that looks so scary and so awful, there is going to have to come a point where you, the regular person, will have to agree that this is something good, that yes, we're going to listen to our alien overlords. We're going to agree that they're the greatest thing ever. And we're going to listen to their spokesman, Klaus Schwab, is that his name? Klaus Schwab, and Bill Gates, and all the other people who are going to be speaking for the alien invasion as well. And we're going to do everything they say. So as long as we make each other aware before this happens, then that can be removed as an element, where you're going to have people agreeing to sign on. Let's put it that way. Sign on to buy in to this invasion being a great thing and something that humanity needs. That's what they're going to be seeking. They're going to be seeking for humanity to say, oh yeah, we think this is a terrific thing. And they're going to cure cancer. They're going to help us with all these other things. And so we totally agree to this alien invasion. If they don't get that, then the invasion, the fake alien invasion, will be a failure. That's the point that I'm trying to get people to as well, to where no matter how awesome this, and I say awesome in the Catholic sense, inspiring of awe, if this, no matter how inspiring of awe this invasion is, if people can just hold on to their common sense and say, this doesn't look right to me, I'm not going to agree to this, I will not sign on to anything to do with this, then that invasion will be a failure. that's what I'm saying. That's how we protect ourselves.
Great. Well, that's a very important point. So we kind of should finish up on that. So what do you think will happen? I mean, let's just say that it turns out, as you say, that this fake invasion, alien invasion, follows upon this kind of like failure to get the US to go to war against Iran after some alleged or some possible attack on a coordinated attack on a number of American cities. So, what will happen next with the failure of this false flag alien invasion? Do you think it'll be the truth will come out about, say, positive extraterrestrials out there, or do you think it'll be, what do you think will play out next? Because there are people who have been saying that there are positive extraterrestrial civilizations that are working with white hats. So what do you think about that?
I think once they've played their final card and this fake alien invasion is defeated, that's when we will go into the new age. Whether that involves positive alien entities, whether that involves angels, the hand of God, whatever it involves, that's when it's going to happen. When we get to the end of that fake alien invasion, and it's all going to come forward in a very positive way. And I think we will get into the new age, and we will get into the age of God, really. And that's when everything will break positively for all of us.
So, John, where do people go if they want to find out more about your events or buy your books?
Oh, yeah, they definitely go to johntamabooks.com, which you have there on the feeder down there. And but I'm told by Google, people just Google my name, John DeSouza, and they find all my stuff there, including my Facebook and all my other stuff as well. And I just urge people to just arm themselves with knowledge, listen to all of Michael Sala's conferences that he has available and that he does all the time. And it's the only way. It's the only way. You gotta arm yourself, protect yourself, and the best way to do that is with knowledge and understanding. Because once the black swans arrive, once the sky is covered with these ancient ships just hovering, laying there, sitting there, maddening, it will be too late. It'll be too late, and we cannot wait for then to educate ourselves and arm ourselves so that we will stay away from the bad things that cause panic and go towards wisdom and knowledge and love, which is what we really need.
Well, thank you, John, for all your efforts to raise awareness and to awaken people to what's happening. I think you're doing great work. So thank you for being on Exopolitics Today.
Thank you, Michael. It's been awesome. Good stuff.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Sala. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Sala. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.